Our next inductee will be Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog. To say that Davey Boy's career was amazing is a gross understatement. It was more than amazing. Davey had charisma, he was strong, he was agile, he knew how to press the right buttons at the right time. Make no mistake about it. Just to give you a little brief synopsis of Davey's career, he started basically in 1978. And from there, when he was in the UK wrestling, Bruce Hart found and discovered him and brought him overseas to Calgary, where he started to wrestle for Stampede Wrestling. He was there in 1982, 1983, and 1984. And then opportunity presented itself in a major way. It's time to get to the bright lights of Broadway. The World Wrestling Federation became his home. It was Davey Boy, a fellow on a read this evening who we're going to have the pleasure of, Jim Neidhart, and Bret Hart. They all came into the WWF in 1984. Now, of course, you could say the rest is history, but absolutely. But there were so many accomplishments for Davey Boy when he was here during that time frame, when rock and wrestling was the rage of entertainment. 1986, WrestleMania 2. Davey Boy teamed up with his fellow Brit, the Dynamite Kid. And of course, we know that that's the British Bulldogs. And they shocked the wrestling world by beating the Dream Team of Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. And they won the WWF Championship. Of course, they had a little bit of entertainment in their package when they procured the services of one young lady. Her name was Matilda. And the Bulldogs, and I know that Davey and Dynamite, as much as that was part of their MO and the part of their repertoire, they hated it. As far as taking the dog from town to town. But, you know, they endured because that was part of what it was all about. Davey and also went back to Calgary, and he returned to the WWF in 1990. But let's go to 1992 because the lovely lady who is sitting here tonight that I'm going to call up here shortly was a lady who was torn. It was Diana Hart Smith who was torn between her husband, Davey Boy, and her brother, Bret Hart. And the end result was what I would call one of the most epic matches that you would have ever seen. Wembley Stadium, SummerSlam, the British Bulldog and Bret. Was Davey Boy becoming the Intercontinental Champion. So that was another amazing accolade for Davey. When he was in New England, Davey was revered with every ounce of fan power. No matter where he went, from Maine to Massachusetts, from Rhode Island to Connecticut, New Hampshire and Vermont, Davey Boy always excelled and always had the fan support. He had a couple of stints, of course, in WCW, but I would say, it's safe to say, folks, that Davey Boy called the WWF his home. Make no mistake about it. It is a pleasure tonight to have the opportunity to give you that synopsis of Davey Boy Smith, and it is my honor and privilege to ask at this time to accept the award on behalf of the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, the one and only Diana Hart Smith.
was said. That was fantastic. Thank you. It's an honor to be here tonight. I'd like to thank Joseph Crowne and the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame for inducting Davey Boy Smith into the class of 2014. Included in the class of 2014 are two of Davey's very good friends, Harley Grace and his brother-in-law Jim Danville Neidhart. What does it mean to be a Hall of Famer? Figuratively speaking, Hall of Famers are noteworthy individuals judged as outstanding in a sport or profession, and their distinctions are evident and incontestable. My late husband, Davey Boy Smith, is among that select elite. I'd just like to tell you a little about what made Davey a part of that elite fame. Davey was born in a little town in northern England called Galway. In 1978, he was the youngest pro wrestler at the age of 14, and he was called Young David. As a lad, he learned the catch-can style of wrestling that he learned from Billy Riley at the Snake Pit in Wigan, not far from where he grew up. And he learned the professional wrestling ropes from Ted Betley, who was famous also for training Davey's cousin, Dynamite Kid, Tom Billington. Davey was also trained extensively in the gym with weights and bodybuilding by Mr. Universe. He was actually the world's most muscular man, that was his title. Walter O'Malley, a fellow from Ireland, and he had a gym in Warrington, O'Malley's gym. So what I'm trying to say is Davey learned from early on from some of the best all over the world, not just in England. He wrestled for joint promotions in England, featuring British wrestling stars like Mick McManus, Pat Roach, Marty Jones, Mark Rollerball Rocco, Fit Finley, Giant Haystacks, and Big Daddy, who was Davey's tag team partner. In 1981, Davey applied for his Canadian work visa to work in Canada and Calgary with his cousin, the Dynamite Kid, for my father at Stampede Wrestling. And while he was waiting for his visa, he went to South Africa and wrestled down there with a British guy named Stephen Peacock, who was very good to Davey in South Africa. And he also wrestled for Steve Rackman as Steve's son in Australia. By late spring in 1981, Davey was finally in Calgary, and when I met him in my father's front hall, it was not a secret that I fell in love with him right from the start. When Davey began to wrestle for Stampede Wrestling, he was a fan favorite. And the first feud that he had was, ironically, with his cousin, the Dynamite Kid. But nobody knew that they were cousins. It was a big secret for a long time. They had a heated rivalry over the world mid-heavyweight title, and the two had absolutely fantastic chemistry. They decided to take their style to Japan around 1983 and work there as cousins and became godlike to the sophisticated Japanese wrestling fans. Davey and Dynamite were amongst the most explosive tag team in pro wrestling, and they just worked so well together. They worked internationally as a tag team, first over in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and then over to Giant Baptist promotion, All Japan Pro Wrestling. And eventually, around 84, 85, the pair became known as the British Bulldogs, and they joined the ranks of the World Wrestling Federation and becoming the champions in 86, as you said, at WrestleMania in Chicago. And I'll just move ahead to when Dynamite retired. Davey embarked on a singles career in the WWF, and it was the iconic match at SummerSlam '92 that Davey had against my brother Brett that really defined and amplified what Davey was capable of. There were over 80,000 fans in attendance, And that event sold out faster than any event in Wembley's history at that time. It sold out in 11 hours. And they wrestled, Brett and Davey wrestled for nearly 45 minutes for the Intercontinental title. In the main event spot that's usually held for world title matches only. And I was there at ringside, and I was a part of their legitimate brother versus brother-in-law storyline. And I watched in amazement history being made. The match that Davey and Brett gave is arguably the best match in SummerSlam history and one of the best recorded matches in existence. Davey went on to, again, to become a World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champion, but this time it was with my brother Owen as his partner. And those two had some chemistry too. They wrestled simultaneously holding the tag team belts, but in Berlin wrestled for the European heavyweight, European Championship title, which Davey won. In 1998, Davey joined the WCW, and he continued, as Howard said, a successful stint there as a mainstream star, though he was beginning to really struggle with compounding physical pain. And at Fall Brawl 98, it was one fateful hard landing he made on a steel trapdoor hidden under the canvas in the ring that literally was the straw that broke the Bulldog's back. Davey returned to what is now the WWE in 1999, but by that time he was plagued with so much surmountable physical pain and emotional too, that he was living in perpetual torture. In Davey's 39 years, his body endured tremendous punishment. Just a few examples. In 1981, he almost bled to death in the ring in Regina. Thank God my brother Brett was there watching from the curtain and actually took him out of the match and walked him straight across the street to the hospital. Thank God again the hospital was straight across the street, or he would have died. He ended up with about 25 stitches, starting here, through his temple, across the scalp over his ear, and then deep into his scalp. It was, then in 1988, he almost lost his life in a car accident on the way to a wrestling match. And if Davey had not been as big and strong as he was, he would have broken his neck or worse. But it's funny though, when that happened, when he eventually came to, which was a few hours later, he was searching around. The paramedics were trying to get his, what is your name, or to see if he could remember anything vital. And he was annoyed, and he said, "I want my chocolate ice cream cone," which is what he was eating when the crash happened. It's kind of cute, actually. In 1992, Davey almost lost his leg to the staphylococcal species of the flesh-eating disease about 7 weeks before SummerSlam, and it was his brother-in-law, my brother-in-law, Jim Neidhart, in Tampa, who got him to the right doctor in time, and they saved Davey's leg and his career. Jim took care of him. He really did. It was pretty awful, but Davey. But in 1999, Davey was sitting in the hospital in Calgary. He'd been in there for quite some time in what he called a turtle shell, which was this back brace he had to wear in hopes of resetting his broken back from the Fall Brawl incident in '98. The crack in Davey's back had become infected, and he was battling all kinds of things from this infection to the break in his back to losing his job. And my brother Owen came by the hospital to see him and basically told Davey not to worry, that he and Vince would find a spot for Davey back in the WWE. And tragically, Owen died about 10 days later. But to compound that, about in the 6 months prior to that, Davey lost his mother, Joyce, and his little sister, Tracy, to cancer. And also lost, we lost our nephew, Matthew, to flesh-eating disease. It seems to be something in our family. But living through tragedy and loss and also experiencing the privileges of fame and fortune, Davey grew into an even more compassionate and generous person than he already was. He felt it a privilege to visit the many sick children and people who were suffering from things like cancer and paralysis. He was a big supporter of the Light Up a Child's Life in Calgary, the Christie's Cancer Hospital in Manchester. You know, it meant a lot to him that he meant a lot to people. Davey had a lot of ups and downs, but he had a wonderful life. He was a stunning person inside and out. He had a really good heart. He was kind of innocent sometimes, but he was also as tough as anybody I know. Davey had such a sharp, witty sense of humor, and he was, you know, so damn funny. And that's a reflection of how smart he was. I admire him for so many things. He had a lot of integrity. And I remember in 1991, 92, an example of this was on a big WWF tour in Europe. He was really catapulting into his British Bulldog persona. He was this tan, sculpted, massive superstar wrestler with his Union Jack flag on his back, and his Union Jack tights and boots, red, white, blue beads in his braids. And no matter what direction you saw him from the ring or where you were sitting in the arena, you knew that it was the British Bulldog you were watching. His moves made him an unforgettable wrestler, and his character of the British Bulldog really meant something to his fans. The WWE happened to be in Belfast, Northern Ireland, on this particular night. One of the American road agents decided that it was not politically correct for Davey to wear his Union Jack gear down to the Belfast ring. And the agent insisted that a nice basic pair of black trunks and a basic pair of short black boots would be a swell alternative for Davey to wear down to the ring. So, and that was, in Belfast, it had a little bit of tension with England at the time, Northern Ireland had. So, and the agent was frantically in the process of trying to find these black trunks, black boots, and which would have actually made Davey look like a heel, more than, and you don't. This was the agent's point, was that the Union Jack was going to make Davey more of a heel. Anyway, I just remember Davey was quite perturbed, and he phoned me from Belfast that afternoon, and he told me the situation. And his response to the agent was, no, just flat out, no, I am not doing that. And I totally appreciated where Davey was coming from, because, you see, Davey was not a politician, and he was never ever making a political statement by wearing his Union Jack gear. He was just simply proud of where he came from, and his trademark, that was his trademark. He was the British Bulldog. So, to the chagrin of the agent, Davey did what he felt was the right thing to do for his fans there in Belfast and everywhere else, for his fans everywhere else. And for his own peace of mind, he did what he wanted. And Davey dressed in his Union Jack gear, head to toe, and he confidently walked down to the ring. And as he often did, stood on the second turnbuckle, facing out to the Belfast crowd. He raised one arm in the air with one thumb up, and the British fans cheered him like crazy. And they loved him, and he was always everyone's British Bulldog. Yes, indeed, Davey had experienced a lot of extraordinary things, along with his trophies and championships and accomplishments. One of the most meaningful highlights of Davey's career was having our son Harry wrestle as his tag team partner in Winnipeg, Canada, in May of 2002. It was a match that our son Harry, at the age of 16, actually booked for the two of them to do. And it was a dream come true for both of them. Who knew that Davey would be gone about 2 weeks later? So Harry, our son, proudly carries on Davey's legacy in wrestling around the world as Davey Boy Smith Jr. And Davey's and my daughter Georgia is diligently establishing the Davey Boy Smith Memorial Cup over in England with the help of Alex Shane and Wrestle Talk TV and Adam Barry. I think Davey would be very proud that his children have such respect, and you know, they're they have a lot of distinction. I want to say just thank you to some people very significant in Davey's life, and then close with one final thought. I know Davey would thank his mom and dad, Joyce and Sid and his family. He would thank the Stu and Howard Hart and the Hart family. He'd want to thank his brothers inside and outside of the ring, including the Dynamite Kid, Brett and Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Hart, he's one of Davey's very best friends, Owen Hart, Brian Pillman, and a heartfelt thanks to his beloved mascots Matilda and Winston. He had a very special relationship with dear Matilda, and she made sure he had a nice bark. He would want to thank promoters and promotions such as the Crabtrees at Joint Promotions in England, Stampede Wrestling, Vince and Linda McMahon, and Tony Lenoke, Johnny Baba, Bruce Allen, and Martin and Harvey Goldsmith, the two who promoted the show over in England, the Wembley Stadium show. He'd want to thank every wrestler with whom he had the privilege of working. He'd thank all the fans here tonight, all of you in Warwick. You know, Davey really loved this area. He loved wrestling in the Boston Garden. He wrestled and enjoyed being in places like Hartford, Connecticut, Worcester, and Salem, Massachusetts, Portland, Maine, and Providence, Rhode Island, just to mention a few. He would thank all of his fans from all over the world. Your support has immortalized Davey Boy Smith, and I'd like to think that Davey is looking down from heaven, and I know that he would be very grateful. In closing, I know Davey's accomplishments and contributions to wrestling will never ever be forgotten, and he has hard-earned his prominent place in wrestling history and in the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. So I'd like to dedicate this, I'd like to accept this induction of Davey into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame on behalf of our children, Harry and Georgia, who are in Japan and England. Thank you.